I'm Laura Bonnell, and this is the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast coming to you from Detroit. Please subscribe and even rate and comment on our podcasts when it moves you. I learn something new with every podcast, and I'm always inspired by the people that are showcased here. We don't give medical advice. You need to connect with your doctor for that. I hope that this Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast educates you and sparks some volunteering or advocacy. The CF community needs people like you. Thanks to our sponsors, Viatris and Vertex, for their support. We always celebrate extraordinary people on this podcast, and this podcast is no exception. Sophie Holmes is a force, and she's an inspiration to any runner, to any person with cystic fibrosis, and of course, even to parents like myself. She is just incredible. She was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 4 months, and she was told that she might not live past her teens, but she spent her entire life rewriting and proving that she could outlive her life expectancy, so she rewrote her own script. And most recently, she achieved an incredible feat for anyone with or without cystic fibrosis. She ran 36 marathons in 36 days. I don't even know how your body can take that, but we will find out. So that's 26.2 miles every day. She had relentless drive, and she just isn't surviving cystic fibrosis. She is thriving in life. She's done so much. She did the Lake Como Ultra Ironman world record, 255 kilometers. So she'll let us know. She is an elite athlete. She's a personal trainer, a powerful advocate for chronic illness awareness, and she shares what fueled her through every grueling mile, and she manages her health while pushing the limits of endurance. And she believes that mindset is everything, and that is so true, of course. It is everything. She completed those marathons between April 21st and May 26th of last year, of 2024. Her story is just incredible. It just is about her strength, her grit, and the will to defy expectations. So let's get talking to her, because she has a lot to inspire us with, and I'm very excited. Welcome. This is delightful on Eastern Standard Time, and I don't even though my daughter lives in London, I don't know what they call it in England, whatever this time zone is. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. It's the British summertime, so it's, in my opinion, the best time of year coming. So
wonderful. So I just wanted to start right away, because I've been thinking about all the marathons you did constantly, because, I mean, I need a break from just working out, and my workout is nothing compared to your workout. So why did you think about doing the 36 marathons in 36 days? And then how do you train for that?
it's quite a feat. The reason the back-to-back marathon challenge came along was because when I was 16, I basically got told that, the doctors were like, well done. You've made it to the predicted age that we didn't think you'd make it to, having cystic fibrosis. How do you feel about that? But also, you won't make 30. So, there's no point you kind of being too driven or too determined, because it's just not going to happen. Even though there was nothing to really suggest health-wise that I couldn't have a fair shot at it. So when I was 16 and heard all this news, I promised myself that I'd celebrate my 30th birthday in a way that was unforgettable, and in a way that would show that, one, I'm very much alive and well, and also just very grateful to be able to do the things I want to do. And so the original challenge was 30 marathons in 30 days for my 30th birthday. But my 30th birthday landed when we were in COVID, so obviously it wasn't something that was going to be possible at that time. But I always knew that it would come around, and I'm a firm believer of the right thing happens at the right time. And last year I had a spot in the London Marathon, and I also had a spot in the Edinburgh Marathon, which happened to be 36 days apart. So I thought, well, there's an extra few marathons when you're going to do 30.
That is incredible. And like I said in the introduction, it's incredible with or without cystic fibrosis, right? I mean, it's still so much. And I know you shared all this on Instagram. Believe me, I've watched everything about you that I possibly could. But tell everyone, how do you train for that?
I mean, it is a very long training process, but to kind of put a bit of a preface on it, like I've got a background now in endurance training for many years prior to this challenge. So when I was 19, I got told that I only had 2 years to live. And so I wanted to kind of prove them wrong. I think it's very in my nature to be very defiant. And so I went into endurance running and I'm doing a bit more on that basis. So like I do have a background in doing a kind of a bit of endurance based stuff. But the whole training for this particular challenge obviously is very grueling. It started 6 months prior to the event, with the first week being 30 kilometers, which doesn't seem too bad. But then it slowly builds up to, I think my biggest week was 195 kilometers, which was a simulation week pre-event. Lots of back-to-back long runs and things like that. So it's building up over a long time, a series of weeks. Unfortunately for me, like I just didn't get injured. I had no issues. My body coped with it really well, considering I was training for this through the winter as well. So lots of rain, wind. It was kind of a horrendous time, but I actually really enjoyed the process. And I think that's one of the most important things when you're going to set yourself a challenge. Like, you're not always going to enjoy the process. Sometimes you're having to force yourself out the door, especially when you're doing back-to-back 20-mile runs. Like, no one can say that they love doing. So I think my final week was 6 back-to-back 20-mile runs, finishing on a marathon. So it was a lot, and I was still working. Like, this obviously was part of what I was doing for a job, and not all of it. So it was just a period of time where I was like, I am going to show the world like what is possible, and you get your head down and really focus on what you want to achieve for 6 months.
And you really did. You showed the world. I mean, everyone has seen it, and you're in the Guinness World Records. So that's pretty incredible. How was that day when you went there? Didn't you get a photo taken there? And
yeah. So I went up there. Lucky enough, I live quite close. It's in London, so went up there, got the certificate, met the team, and obviously they were like, "So what are you doing next then?" And I was like, "Let me just rest from this." It was such a phenomenal experience in so many different ways, and obviously I think 98% of the marathons out of those 36 I did solo. So a lot of it was to do with my mindset and obviously the grit determination to show like myself and obviously other people like what can be done. And also, the promise I made to my 16-year-old self that I was going to do this and I was going to become a world record holder despite everything I've been told.
Were there different groups of people that cheered you on along the way? Like family, friends, or just people that follow you on social media?
Well, I think it was a combination of both. So I had my dad with me every day, kind of meeting me at certain points with like fuel and things like that. I had friends and a partner. My partner came and did various parts of various runs. And obviously, fortunately for me, because I did a lot of them in my local area, I had people who were following the challenge, cheering and like, doing parts with they were route running themselves. And it was actually such an incredible experience because it showed like how actually a community came together and just wanted to see you win as well.
That is incredible. And then, everybody says when you have cystic fibrosis, I think it's anything in general. I mean, as an older person, I need to work out, and do different things. But it is really important in cystic fibrosis to work out. And how do you balance it? How do you balance the salt and the carb intake while you're running? I mean, I had to learn that just as, basic stuff. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it is tough. And I think one of the best things I did and what I always offer advice to people to say is learn your body because everyone's body is so different. Like pre a marathon, I would have some water and electrolytes. During the runs, obviously I'd have fuel from like gels to different forms of carbs, to obviously then carb drinks, and electrolytes mid-run and after the run. I think the most important thing is obviously not missing like a fuel stop. Like for me, I'll fuel every 30 minutes during a marathon, and especially more so if you're going to be doing something like back-to-back marathons, because as soon as that marathon's finished, you're fueling for the next day. And you've got to obviously go and do it all over again. So for me, like the nutrition had to be really focused, and that's what the training was about as well. We learned what worked, what didn't work, and what we had to do exactly for every single day of the challenge. So obviously, eating the same things every day for 5 weeks wasn't fun or easy, but it was necessary if I wanted to get through this healthy, uninjured, and obviously just actually enjoy the process as well.
I mean, because you share everything, I'm just asking, do you have CF-related diabetes? Is that...
No, I'm unfortunate. I've been like borderline a few times, but not ever come to fruition.
So you're able to kind of regulate everything yourself and just kind of figure
Yeah.
out what works for your body.
Yeah.
What kind of mental support do you have throughout just life in general, or maybe that you needed during all these marathons?
I think I'm fortunate to say that I've got an incredible circle around me, and I'm very, very fussy and picky where I put my energy. And I think you learn as you grow up with experience what's good for you, what's not. And I'm not afraid to kind of walk away from a situation or people that aren't giving me what I need in return of what I give them. Because I'm a firm believer of you've got to support your friends in the good and the bad times, but some people do just drain your energy. And unfortunately for me, I've had to walk away from a few things, but I think you grow as people and you either grow with people or you don't. And, I think it's a one thing that people are afraid to do is walk away from an old friend that they've known all their lives, even if they're not good for them. But you only have one shot at this life. And so you have to do what's right for you as well and put yourself in situations where it's going to support you, help you grow, and that you can do that in return in the right place. So, I've very carefully over the years built my friendship groups, but I think it also comes from the things I love to do, which a lot of it is to do with being outdoors and within the fitness space. And it's where I've met my partner, some of my best friends. And I think overall it is a positive place to be. And so I'm just really fortunate that I've got such a fantastic circle around me that I know that no matter the problem or the level of success, say, my friends will always be there.
You influence and have so much impact on so many other people who see everything you're doing on social media. That must also inspire you like you inspire everyone else. I mean, I'm a fan. You're amazing. Everything I've watched, I'm like, oh, Sophie, go. Like, it's inspiring because I have 2 daughters with cystic fibrosis. Mm-hmm. So to see where you're going, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is so inspirational.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the reason I shared my story in the first place was because I was unwell and I wanted to put it out there to see who I could connect with, who I could inspire. And because I think you never really know the true impact of you just sharing what you're doing or sharing or being vulnerable about your health or your mindset. And, for me, it's like, you never know, like you could save someone one day because they might be like, well, just seeing what she's done, so I'm going to give it a go. And then they fall back in love with life, or it helps their health or things like that. And I think with cystic fibrosis, it can be very isolating because you can't mix, right? In general, unless obviously right. It's in the same family, you kind of have to. But, it's something that people can feel quite isolated with and not want to talk about or be open about. And I've certainly spoken to people in the past that have hidden it from everyone, even their best friends, which cannot be easy. So hopefully I can kind of open people's eyes and like share both sides of it, because I think it's important to know that even with the incredible medication that is out there, some people can't have it. And you do still have CF at the end of the day, so things can crop up every so often. But to be honest, sharing my story and then obviously doing the things I've done in the face of adversity, in the face of being told that, you're too unwell to do all these things. But by doing these things, it's actually made me really well and given me a phenomenal life with some phenomenal adventures and meeting some of the most incredible people. So for me, like, I wouldn't change having CF, even when it does get hard sometimes, or it's frustrating, or, it might hold you back in certain scenarios. But actually, it's given me a drive to really live my life fearlessly and not be afraid to be the person I want to be.
And I think that's so true of so many. I actually wrote that down, that you had said that before, and I feel the same way. The CF community is amazing, and if we had to have a disease, I'm glad it's cystic fibrosis because of the amazing community. And of all the wonderful people that you have met through this process, do you want to tell us about some of them or anyone that you think, wow, so this person really inspired you? Because different people inspire us along the way.
Yeah, of course. So one of the first people that actually inspired me to chase after the bigger goals, like the mountain climbs, the ultra marathon, the paddleboarding races, is a guy called Nick, and he's got CF. And I remember I was sitting in hospital, and I saw that he was going after doing the 7 summits, so Everest, Kilimanjaro, K2, all of those, and he's done it now, right? So he has conquered all the summits, the first person in the world with CF to do it. And I remember thinking, like, do you know what? Like, it's not letting, CF not stopping him. He's possibly driving them forward and raising money at the same time and awareness. And so in my head, I was like, well, if Nick can, I can. And I've since interviewed him and been told him that. And he's like, oh, wow, like, I didn't even realize. He was like, I was just doing it because I wanted to do it and, raise some money and, prove to myself that I can do hard things and achieve big things. And so, like, it just shows that, like, putting yourself out there, and even if you never know about it, because it's not about that, you could actually be helping people to decide to fight or not to fight.
Absolutely. I mean, he inspired you, you're inspiring others. It's a beautiful connection of inspiration. And did you want to tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and kind of, and, where you got to when you decided to run the marathons?
Yeah, of course. So I was diagnosed at 4 months old, but I was also 10 weeks early. So by the time I was diagnosed, like, I think I was about 4 pounds at 4 months old. So I was tiny and I kept stop breathing. And my mum, being that I was her third child, knew that there was something not quite right. But at that time, they didn't test at birth. And doctors didn't believe her. They were like, oh, she's premature. Like, it is what it is. Like, she will be fine. But thankfully for me, there was a nurse on duty that night that had a child with CF, and she touched my skin and she was like, that's not normal. Like, her skin is salty. I'm going to order a CF sweat test. And obviously it came back positive. And so really she saved my life just because she had experience because of her own daughter. And so without her, like, I don't know whether I would have even still been here today. But for my mum and dad, because I did an interview with them a number of years ago, they described it as being told it was like bringing up a child to die. Because back then it was like, well, she definitely won't make 16. She won't have a life. She'll be in hospital on oxygen. Like, that is just the reality of it. But thankfully for me, I also had a doctor who told my mum and dad to let me live my life or support me in things I want to do, with two thoughts in mind. One being that she might not be as affected by the CF as people think. So let her grow up like her siblings, like her friends, doing everything she wants to do, despite what it is. And should that activity start to impact her health, we'll discuss it then. But don't let her not do things because of what people are telling you. Because at the end of the day, if her life is shorter, at least let her live.
Great advice, right? Aren't you glad? I mean,
yeah. Because I think that kind of scares parents a little bit when you're like, oh, hang on a minute, you went swimming, or like if you had a horse and you did all of that stuff that we're told not to do. And I'm like, yeah. But the doctor said to my mum and dad, let her. And if not, and if it makes her unwell, we'll discuss it then. I think, like, I'm so grateful for that, because unless maybe they hadn't have had that advice, maybe they wouldn't have done. But I think my mum and dad were so determined to see what made me well and try to support me and, like, just allow me to live life, knowing that my life was going to be a bit different, because obviously it was more hospital visits and all the things that come with CF and medication. And so I couldn't be more grateful for that.
I mean, could you imagine being in this kind of bubble? Like, that would not have, I wouldn't have done that to our girls either. I mean, I'm sure I know you've inspired your parents. How is your relationship today, as you're doing so well? And I know they still worry, but how is everything going, today with your parents? And
I think hopefully they're just, like, proud of the fact that, like, I've not let it stop me, and the fact that I'll do what I want to do in terms of, like, I'll say I want to achieve something and I will go after it and I will go and get it. Because I think their fear was like, oh, maybe, like, her mindset's not going to be there, and she will just be worried to do things because of her health. But in fact, obviously, I'm the complete opposite. And I think for them, they're like, we're not sure where this mindset's completely come from, because you have never let it stop you. You've always been positive about it. And you've always been like, well, if you deny that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it anyway because it's my life. And, not at the risk of like actually being seriously unwell, but in the view that if my life is shorter, and it still stands today, if my life is shorter than the average person, I at least want to sit there on my last day and be like, do you know what? I had a fantastic time. And that is all that matters. I did so many things. I didn't hold myself back, or I pushed myself to keep leaning into an uncomfortable situation to make sure that my health was the best it could be, whether it be having to do medication or whether it to be doing these challenges, because my thought process was, do you know what? I've got the best support network in the world. My parents will help me do everything I want to do within reason and within their capacity. How about I go out there and show them and be like, be proud of, the fact that they're my parents, for one, because, they're fantastic and I couldn't have been more lucky to have been born into such a family. But also with my two sisters being very supportive with them, like, I had the best opportunities, and, I just want to make them proud and like go out there and live a big life. And I think even some of my friends are like, God, you've done more than we'll ever do in a lifetime. So, hopefully it inspires them as well and other people just to live their lives, even if you've not got there.
And I think you sort of answered this, but, you are living this big life and inspiring so many people. Do you ever tire of talking about CF, or are there days when you're like, I just need a non-CF day? Or is it all just part of life and it's just ebbs and flows?
Yeah, I think it is. It's always there. It's always going to be there. And there'll be days that I mention it more than others. Some days I don't at all because it doesn't always completely cross my mind, obviously, other than taking the medication that I'm still taking. But I think it's important to note, like, even when you've got something like CF, like, it's not your definition. It's not who you are. It may be, for me, or it is especially a driving force to do the things I want to do, stay healthy so I can live longer than, predicted and things like that. But it's definitely never going to be a definition, although obviously it is a big part of what I talk about because it's a big part of why I push myself to do the things I do. And I think it'd be quite easy, especially at this stage where my health is stable, to just not mention it and just live my life and be a very, like, I suppose, a normal kind of person where I go out and do my training, I go to work and all these things. But equally, there is the background of like, well, this is why I do what I do. Like, this is why I set the challenges, or this is why I live a certain way, and this is why I believe in certain things.
You're on Kaftrio, correct?
Yeah.
So did that change? And in America, it's Trikafta, if anyone doesn't know. But did that change significantly how you felt when you went on that modulator?
It definitely did change. In terms of like my lung function is much more stable. My digestive system worked a lot better. And generally, obviously, breathing is much better compared to obviously the restrictions that I had before. But I wouldn't say I've been on it now for 4.5 years. I wouldn't say it's, I think it was over exaggerated on how good it was. In terms of like, I'm very healthy and very stable and I would live like this the rest of my life should Kaftrio still work with my body. But I think people were trying to infer it as a cure when it's certainly not. And I know a lot of people have had to come off it. I think actually a few people in America changed the new version. I can't remember what it's called.
Alyftrek in the US.
Yeah, that's how you say it. But I do think if you're on it, especially if you're younger, it will literally transform your life. And hopefully meaning that what my generation of CF have had to go through, that most people don't anymore, and that you can just live your life very normally with these 3 tablets a day, maybe a few extras like Creon or whatever, but it will save lives, and it does save lives, and it is fantastic. But again, I think you have to work with it. Like, you have to work with the ebbs and flows of that with CF and still look after yourself. And, you can't kid yourself into thinking, oh, well, I'm on Kaftrio or Trikafta now. I don't need to do the fitness, or I don't need to look after the nutrition side of it, because if you work with it, I do believe you get the best result from it.
Yeah, and people are getting sick on Kaftrio, Trikafta. So
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very big point that a lot of people make too. It's definitely not a cure, and I think people kind of started thinking that,
Yeah.
people in the non-CF community. But think about since you were born, all the changes. It seems kind of pretty fast. I mean, you had plug-in vests when you were born, and now they're battery, you can go running with them. I mean, have you seen or you recognize how things have changed in your lifetime?
Oh, it's massively changed. Like I used to be on 80 tablets a day and then 3 nebulizers. And now I'm on Captrio and Creon. So like it's a complete turnaround. And I think for me, like I didn't ever really think that potentially it would happen in my lifetime because it kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. This new medication, obviously it was in the US first and then we fought for it here. It is fantastic because especially now younger children can be on it and you do feel very differently on it. And obviously these things can come with side effects, but luckily for me, they didn't last very long. But I think the future of CF is only ever going to keep getting better, and hopefully one day there will actually be a cure. And I do believe that is something that's possible because I think, they're understanding it a lot more now. They're understanding on how to kind of treat it and treat the actual root cause rather than just the symptom.
I know it's so exciting the way things are going. So, is what you do for work different than all the working out and marathons and health stuff that
So
you're
that is
doing?
kind of part of what I do for a job, which is incredible. So I am a running coach. I obviously do a lot of content creation with brands, and through that, get offered opportunities to run marathons in various parts of the world. So, in some roundabout way, CF has had an involvement in building my career, even if it's obviously not always at the forefront. It's definitely pushed me to be the healthiest and fittest and the most driven mentally and physically. And I feel very lucky for that, actually.
We did mention that you were a running coach in the introduction, but I didn't know if maybe there was something else also that you were doing. And how do you help people to make it to their best running? And I'm guessing because of Zoom, you could talk to people in the US about running or coach them this way also.
Yeah, so I work alongside my sister who lives in Dubai. So we have clients around the world, like a lot of them are US, obviously Dubai, UK, Australia, Germany, all over really. And I think that's the beauty of like the online space now. Like we can literally connect with anybody in the world and help them achieve the goals they want to achieve through their training and mindset and any races that they want to do. And I've done it for 13 years now. So it's such a rewarding job that only inspires and motivates me, seeing people go out there, see their confidence grow, see their ability and the things they want to achieve just surpass what their original goal was. That you just think it just shows that like none of us really know how capable we are unless we actually try.
Absolutely. And I know that, you've said so much about your parents, but for parents who are bringing up a child newly diagnosed with cystic fibrosis today, what other advice do you have for parents that can kind of inspire them? I mean, it's hard, there's different challenges, but from your perspective, what thoughts do you have for them?
So there's a couple of ways we can look at this. The first thing is, as a parent, be as fit and healthy as you can. There is nothing more inspiring than seeing your parents go out there and look after themselves, whether it be doing a sport like running, the gym, Pilates, or whatever sport it is that you really enjoy, to show that you're looking after yourself mentally and physically. And that also goes for, the food you're eating. Because I think obviously, I'm not sure what the advice would be now for people with CF who are young, but the advice that I had was so totally against what I'd actually give now in terms of like, the doctor will like just give her high calorie, high sugar to get the weight on. It's like, actually, that's not going to give your body what it needs. So like set an example as a parent to be the best you can mentally and physically. So, physically you can go and do your exercise and you can obviously eat really well, but also like show balance within that because I think that's important. But on the other side, look after your mental health, whatever that may be, like, untangling the things from your past or because I think it's important to remember that each one of us on this earth, it's like our first time doing this. So like we've got learned behavior from an upbringing, but my parents, for example, have got learned behavior from their parents. And it's like we all are able to constantly work on ourselves. And so don't ever be afraid to start at whatever age you're at, because it's only going to then help the generations that are coming. And then I guess in terms of like towards your baby or your young child, it's like, let them live, let them do the things they want to do. And obviously explain about when they're old enough about the CF side of things and why fitness and health is important. But finding a sport and or like an activity that they enjoy is only going to help them because of their social circles, because of the discipline, because of building resilience, but also having fun. And I think it's one thing that I personally am working on, is because I spent most of my life, about the last 4 years really, fighting against CF because of, the medication wasn't as good. And, I was more unwell, more in hospital and things like that. I forgot to actually, despite all the things I've done, fully immerse myself and find joy in that, and like be free and playful and all these things. Because for me, I was like, I've just got to survive. Like, anything that was a negative emotion would cause me to be back in hospital. So I ended up just kind of being like, right, well, we'll hit the middle ground here, because I've still got to be serious and focus on my health, but I also want to do all these amazing things. But I know that I was so worried about being back in hospital that I also forgot just to let go a little bit. That the beauty of the medication we have now, because it means that your health is more stable, you can live a bit more carefree and you can enjoy and be a bit more relaxed and things like that, which can only mean that you'll probably do the things you love better as well, because you're enjoying them and you're having fun. And after all, like, that is what life is all about: having a good time, enjoying the experience, and what it comes being a human being.
Great advice. And what are you, 31 or 32 now?
I'm actually 33 now, so very grateful for that.
Molly is 30 and Emily is 27. So 30 years ago, I mean, the stuff you just said is so, you have no idea how experienced what you said about being a parent and how long it took me to realize. I always knew that I was setting an example for my kids, but I think that taking care of yourself stuff gets put on the back burner. It's all about the girls, got to just them. So that is great advice. I'm sure other parents will appreciate it. What do you hope for yourself and for people with cystic fibrosis in the future?
Obviously, if medication can continue to get better, then, and also obviously for the people that can't have it, I think that's important to note, because I think, there is a small, I think it's still 10% of people that say can't have this medication, which is why it's so important to keep sharing the message. I just hope that everyone with CF actually can try and also enjoy their life, because I think there is obviously still a lot of negative around it. And I think it's still, obviously you have to understand that there will be ebbs and flows with CF. And I'm not sure about your girls and how they are, but it will still crop up every so often because it's still there. And I think it's, a fantastic reminder sometimes, although it's frustrating. I think it's just like, just be fearless with what you want to do, because actually no one knows when their final day is here, CF or not. And I always say to myself, like, if I've got a decision that I am wanting to make, I look at that decision and look at it two ways. Like, will I regret not doing this at the end of my life? Like, is it that big a decision? Or I think about like what my last day would look like and whether there was anything that I wish I'd been brave enough to do, and whether it's something that I really am passionate about doing.
Is there something you're thinking about now about doing? Anything that you can share?
And there's just a few projects that I want to kind of bring to light, or life, that I know that, I guess until now I wouldn't have been the right time to do them anyway. Like, as I've said, like, I'm a firm believer that things come to you when the time is ready, or you're ready to receive and do them. So one of them is to write a book. Another one is to relaunch my own podcast. And hopefully they're two projects that come to light in the next couple of years. Because I think we all are driven of finding our purpose. And I think part of my purpose was to have CF and obviously do the things I've done. But I also know that there is a bigger purpose out there at this point. So, there are two things that I'm hoping that I'll be able to push to achieve in the next few years. And I know that I'd also be really proud to make them happen.
Oh, they will happen. I have no doubt. They're going to happen. And when they happen, we'll all be cheering you on because it's definitely happening. Did you want to wrap this up by saying anything that I didn't ask you, or talking about your partner, or telling us anything a little bit about your life and how you have fun when you're not working so hard?
I think for me, it's just about actually being a bit calmer, because I think I'm so like focused and like love to push myself and all of that. And so what I try and do on the flip side of that is to do things that are a bit more calm, and like walking the dogs or seeing my friends, or, you know, doing different sports that don't involve, I guess, pushing limits and things like that. And I think it's something that I'm still discovering. Like, I'm reading again, for example. Like, I've not done that for years. And I think trying to be off of my phone as much as possible. Obviously, it's my job, but also I don't want to be on my phone all the time. I think it's important to actually just be present in your life and with the people you're with. You know, the thing I always think about is, you know, we don't know when anyone's last day is, but also it's so easy to live through a screen. And how about actually just being completely focused and present on the person and the conversation you're in? And you can always learn something from someone, but also you can always feel inspired, and like your energies can change. And so it's something that I always do, is like, if I'm with someone or whatever, I'm fully engaged in what they're saying.
Well, it's wonderful. You're wonderful. And thanks for taking time to do this podcast with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen.
It's not complicated.
Who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrated, but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceutical, The Science of Possibility, and Viatris. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.